Good morning. Welcome to the American Enterprise Institute.
Morning, everybody. Hey.
We're honored to have someone who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Senator Lindsey Graham came to the United States Senate in 2002 after an 8-year career in the House, where he was the first Republican to be elected from his district since Reconstruction. And in the House and Senate, he developed a reputation as a leader in national security policy, a fighter for conservative internationalism and American engagement in the world. And he is also a proud member of the 1%. The 1% of Americans who actually serve our nation in uniform. He had a 33-year career as an Air Force lawyer, both in active duty and in the Guard and Reserve. And so he brings a perspective to national security of both a policymaker in Washington and also someone who's worn our nation's uniform. So we're very proud to have you here at AEI.
Well, thank you. I work with Marc a lot and live to tell about it, so that's pretty good.
Well, so you've often said that border security is national security, so we'd be remiss not to start with immigration.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to ask you to confirm or deny anything that was said in that meeting the other day, but I want to ask you about the other meeting that took place in the White House that you also attended that week, when the President of the United States expressed a desire to not only legalize the Dreamers, but to pursue comprehensive immigration reform that would legalize 11 million illegal immigrants who are in this country. And he said that he would take the heat if Senator Durbin and members of Congress were willing to do that. That's a remarkable offer from a president who has made cracking down on illegal immigration a central tenet of his tenure. Do you think that the comprehensive immigration reform is something that could happen?
Well, I think it has to eventually. The Tuesday Trump, I like that guy. Come back. Wherever you went, come back. So here's the deal with the Tuesday Trump. He brings in a bunch of members of Congress, House and Senate, commands the room. He's funny, he's engaging, he knows what he's talking about. He's a great listener. He's the guy that I like playing golf with. And he talked about several things. I don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. We need border security, including a wall. I want merit-based immigration. How many of you here want merit-based immigration? I do. How many of you believe we need more legal immigration? I do. If you run a business, it's hard to find workers. So he laid out a pathway on the economic side of immigration that made sense to me. More legal immigration, breaking chain migration, which is one green card holder can bring in a ton of people. We're going to try to limit it to nuclear family, and that frees up thousands of green cards for workers. That all makes sense. Then he said we're going to do it with love. Now, the Homeland Security Secretary didn't hear the word love. I did. Now, Trump doesn't say love a lot, but he said it, and quite frankly, I thought it was compelling and one of the best performances by a president since I've been up here. What happened? I have no idea what happened Thursday in terms of what changed, but I do know how this movie ends, and I want you to know how it ends. We're not going to leave 800,000 people with no place else to go out in the cold. The DREAM Act population have one thing in common. They came here at a relatively young age. The average is 6. They've lived here a long time. They've gone through a criminal vetting process. They add value to the country, and we're going to fix their problem. For a Republican to believe that we will get all the defense funding we desperately want and need, and we'll deal with the Dreamers later, how naive can you be? To the Republican leadership who helped craft sequestration, Ronald Reagan is rolling over in his grave. Of all the dumb ideas I've been witness to, sequestration was the top of the list for me. Why, Marc? The idea was we're going to cut $1.2 trillion out of the budget over a decade. Count me in for reducing spending. We're going to spend $47 billion, so 1.2 shouldn't be that hard to find. The super committee was going to lead us to the promised land, but in case they fail, we're going to have a clause called sequestration. We'll cut 1.2, but we'll do it across the board, half from defense and half from non-defense discretionary spending, and we won't touch entitlements. So when I heard that, I said, oh my God, if this actually became law, Congress has shot down more planes than any enemy. We've sunk more ships. When you look at the damage we've done in the military, no enemy could hope to do this. So with Congress, assume the worst and you'll seldom go wrong. So the super committee didn't work. Calling it super doesn't make it better. So it failed. Sequestration kicked in 2011, and the military is in a bad way. And those who created this mess need to help me fix it. So I want to say one thing in case anybody's listening. I'm in two camps. I believe we should take care of the DREAM Act kids now, not wait to March 5th. And we should increase defense spending now. So those who think that we're going to get away as Republicans with getting all we want on defense now, and we'll deal with the kids later, the DREAM Act population, closer to March 5th when their back's against the wall, that is nuts. And I am going to take this message to the floor of the Senate, and I'm in the camp of doing something right by the Dreamers and doing something right by the military, and do it now and do it together.
Let's talk about phase two, though. Phase two was a comprehensive reform.
Right.
So the president, most people were shocked by what the president said about comprehensive reform, but in fact, he can't. If you watch what he said during the campaign, he campaigned on a policy that you're familiar with called touchback, which is the idea that as long as these people go back to their home countries, the good ones get to come back in an expedited fashion to work here permanently. You were one of the original authors of
I've
the
been in every
proposal.
gang you can be.
So, is that one? Is that a possibility? And two, is this really a unique opportunity in the sense that just like only Nixon could go to China, maybe only Donald Trump could sign comprehensive immigration reform?
Well, Mark, not only, this is like Nixon goes to China and doesn't come back. So that's how big it would be if Donald Trump actually could get this done. I think he can. I think he wants to, but he's got to take the heat. So what does phase two look like? It looks like we're going to secure the border firmly and completely. We're going to deal with the visa overstays, because if you don't, you've left 40% of the illegal immigrants behind. If you don't increase legal immigration, you're hurting the economy. And one of the reasons people hire illegals, they can't find workers and they cheat. So we need a national e-verify in the future to make sure employers are doing it right. We need to secure our border. We need to reform the visa system. We need a wall, but not just a wall. We need to increase legal immigration, and we need an e-verify system. Why? So we don't have 11 million 20 years from now. To get that, you got to deal with the 11 million. The way this movie ends is that the non-bad hombres, the 11 million who've been here a long time, can come out of the shadows. If they're not a felon, if they hadn't committed 3 misdemeanors, they can stay. And over a 10-year period, they can work toward a green card. They have to pass an English proficiency exam, they have to pay taxes, and they have to get in the back of the line, and they have to have a job. They have to do all those things. In return, we get a merit-based immigration system where we bring people in based on the economic needs of the country from all over the world, not just Norway. And we start issuing green cards based on minor children and spouses to go away from family-based immigration to merit-based immigration. That's phase two. That's the Gang of 8 bill. Every time you talk about this, it's like you discover a new country. Nothing's being said today that hasn't been said before. Bush tried it. He got 42% of the Hispanic vote. We're down to the mid-20s now. You'll never convince me that the way we've handled immigration has not hurt us with the Hispanic community, a community that should be our voters. So I'm hopeful that we can get through phase one. I'm hopeful we can go on to comprehensive. And the one thing about President Trump, he has credibility with the right that no one else has. So when he says the border's secure, I think most people are going to believe him. I think he's really the only guy who can do this. And if we fail, then shame on us all.
Do the Democrats really want to cut a deal with Donald Trump to do all that? I mean, the fact if when the number 2 leader of the, regardless, and positing that what President Trump said in that meeting, if it's true, was terrible. If you're the number 2 leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and you're trying to negotiate a deal with the President of the United States, and you're really serious about it, do you leak that, or do you just ignore it and push forward and try and get a deal? It strikes me that they prefer the politics and the issue than solving it.
No doubt in my mind that Dick Durbin wants a deal in spite of what's said. He said that yesterday. Sometimes there's some things said that are going to get out because they shouldn't have been said the way they were said. I would imagine if it had been a Democratic president saying some pretty wild things. We'd heard about it. So leaking it is not unknown to this town. What's unknown is inviting the number 2 Democrat into a meeting and have the president stuck to the ceiling. Not very good staff work. So there are some Democrats running in 2020 who will never accept the concept of the wall. Mm-hmm. They don't support our proposal because the president gets his wall money for FY18. There's some Democrats who are playing for the left. I won't do anything with Donald Trump during the resist movement. Most Democrats want a deal. Most Republicans have gotten to the point now where we will deal with the 11 million if we get something for it. Amnesty used to be you got to boil them in oil, and if you're not willing to do that, you're soft. Amnesty moved to it. They can stay here, but they can't be citizens. Now amnesty is chain migration. Mm-hmm. I like Tom Cotton. He's a very good guy on national security issues. But Tom Cotton's want the Democrats for the DACA population to change family-based immigration. That's what you get at the end, not at the front. We're not going to give 11 million people legal status and hope the Democrats deal with us on merit-based immigration and border security. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, there's a deal. There's plenty of Democrats who want a deal.
All right. Let's talk about national security. So Friday is one year mark of President Trump's inauguration. Broad question is, how are we doing on the world stage compared to where we were a year ago today?
Great. Compared to a year ago, I'm the happiest guy in town. Why? Because we've got a president who actually wants to rebuild the military. We're at the lowest spending per GDP on defense since the end of World War II. Sequestration kicked in 2011. Look at what happens, Marc, since 2011. Look at the conflicts we're in today that did not exist in 2011, and look what we've done to our capabilities. Literally, the Congress has done more damage to the military than any enemy. So what I like about President Trump, he thinks sequestration's crazy. He wants to go set it aside and dramatically increase defense spending like Ronald Reagan. So count me in. He shot a missile at Assad, dropped a bomb on him when nobody else did. Good. He's been a better ally to Israel. Great. He's let the military fight ISIL. We don't do it with one hand tied behind our back. We're actually going after these guys. He says the Iranian deal sucks. He's right. He's trying to get a better deal. In terms of Rocket Man, he said, I'm not going to let you hit America with a nuclear-tipped missile. I don't want a war, but if I have to use military force to stop you, I will. He's the first president to really challenge the North Koreans with a threat of credible military force. So across the board, I think he's doing a very good job. When it comes to Iran containment policy, I think we're weak there.
Okay. Well, let's talk about North Korea. So
okay.
Last month you put the odds of a preemptive attack on North Korea at 30% and 70% if there was another nuclear test. Where are we today, and what should we be doing?
Well, the first decision President Trump had to make is how do you handle North Korea nuclear program. So the first time we met in the White House, about 30 days after he got elected, he apologized for giving out my phone number, and I said that was the height of my campaign. Don't worry about it. That's the best I did. And he said, well, what's your new number? I said, we're going to try this again. So I gave him my new number. Then we went in and had lunch. And General McMaster was there and a few other people. And he said, what do you think my challenges will be? I said, North Korea in the short term, Iran in the long term. Mm-hmm. You got to decide between the following options. Excuse me. Rubio moment here. Marc goes great on these issues, by the way. Do you let them have a nuclear weapon to hit America, a missile tip to hit America, and contain it by saying, if you ever use it, I'll wipe you off the map? That's one. It's called containment. The other is denial. I'm never going to allow you to develop the technology to hit America with a nuclear weapon. And if you try to do it, I'll use military force to stop you. That's called denial. He asked me, what would you do? I said, I'd do the second one. He asked McMaster, he says, I agree with Senator Graham. Why? Anything they build, they'll sell. I don't know if he'll use it on any given day, but I don't want to live our lives wondering if he might. I want to live our lives knowing what he can do. I don't want future generations of Americans having to wonder on any given day what Kim Jong-un or the next Kim Jong might do. I don't want them to have a big nuclear arsenal and missiles included that they can sell to people who would use it. So I'm in the denial camp. Once you make the denial decision, then you got to have a credible threat of military force, and that's where we're at.
So you mentioned the Syria strike. He finally enforced Obama's red line in Syria.
Right.
Syrians were told not to use chemical weapons. They did, and he took out the base from which they did it. Is that a viable option in North Korea? Could we, for example, declare a ballistic missile no-fly zone? Just warn them that we will not allow you to test any more missiles, and if you do, we'll take it out. And if we don't,
Right.
and if you don't respond, we're not going to take out your regime. It'll be limited to that. But if you do retaliate against the South, then it's game over.
Well, since you're my host and you're a pretty smart guy, that makes some sense to me. What's the goal? Is to stop the technological advancements on their missile program to the point they can hit America with a nuclear-tipped missile and all of our allies. You do that through diplomacy. The key is China. But militarily, one way to stop their technology is to say any more test is a provocative act and we're going to shoot that missile down. How does this movie end? China doesn't want a war in their backyard. We're not going to tolerate one in ours. If China really believes Trump would use military force to stop the threats coming from North Korea, I think they would change their behavior. They own the North Korean economy. A war with North Korea would be devastating. As to how you stop the threat, the first bomb drop, you got to assume the worst, not the best. You got a kind of a missile containment strategy with a military component. That might work. But let's say the CIA, Pompeo comes in and tells the president they're just a few weeks away from having the breakthrough. I don't think you can surgically strike North Korea. They have a lot of capability directed at South Korea and Japan in the region. So when I say the military option is the last resort, I mean it, because thousands of people could get killed. And this is the world Donald Trump lives in. You've got a choice between homeland security, stopping a threat emanating from North Korea to protect the homeland. And the way you protect the homeland is put millions of people at risk. That is a very bad spot to find yourself. And everybody before Donald Trump put him here. Every Republican and every Democratic president, every Congress talked tough and did nothing. So one of the reasons I want to help the president is he has a really hard job right now. There is no place to kick the can when it comes to North Korea. We're getting closer to the moment the technology can actually be deployed to hit America. I am 100% confident that if he had to, as a last resort, he would go to war with Kim Jong-un. It would be devastating, but Kim Jong-un would lose.
Do you think Kim Jong-un believes that? Because the North Koreans are behaving. One of the problems we have with trying to get a diplomatic solution to it is that they are convinced that they're untouchable because of what they can do to Seoul, right? Yeah. So do they believe that Donald Trump really is capable? And are his tweets, for example, helping in trying to convince them that he's serious and that he's different from other presidents?
I don't think they can hurt. I think his policies have to be real in the eyes of your enemies. Mm-hmm. So as we build up military capability, it makes it more real to North Korea. We're not seeking regime change. We're not trying to bring democracy to North Korea. We're not trying to unify the peninsula. We're trying to stop a threat to our homeland emanating from North Korea. It's a reasonable goal. Clearly, they don't believe that he will use force, or they would have stopped their testing. The difference between 30% and 70% is if they ever explode another warhead, that's the key, miniaturizing the warhead to put on a missile that can survive reentry. When they go down testing the warhead more, then that means they're really getting close. So I think if there's a warhead tested anytime soon, then the likelihood of a preemptive strike goes up. The Olympics. I like the Olympics as well as anybody else. Pretty clear, Hitler used the Olympics to advance his cause. He had the largest stage on the world and he exploited it. Here's a simple rule. If you have the largest system of concentration camps in the world, if you systematically rape and torture your own people and you threaten the world with nuclear attack, you probably shouldn't go to the Olympics. I think what Kim Jong-un is going to see out of this is that how bad could I be? I'm going to the biggest party in the world. How bad could I be? If we can negotiate an end to this, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. South Korea is a great ally. They're in a bad spot. But I think the signals that they're sending to North Korea are undercutting what Trump's trying to do, which will make it more likely that we will build up military capability, not less.
Why can't we contain them like we contained the Soviet Union? What's the difference?
They'll sell the technology. Mm-hmm. Cash-starved and crazy are two bad combinations. Name one weapon he's developed that he hasn't used. That he hasn't sold. It's just not smart to let someone this crazy to have a nuclear arsenal with the capability to reach America. I don't want to live that way. And whether he uses it or not, he's certainly likely to sell it to somebody who will. Iran. The difference between North Korea and Iran, I told the president, is pretty stunning. North Korea is about regime survivability. It's about a cult of a personality. You know, the North Korean family lineage is pretty interesting. Their grandfather claimed to beat the Japanese all by himself. Pretty impressive. Kim Jong-un's, and to be born in a volcano, which is even more impressive. Kim Jong-un, the grandfather, this guy's father, said he had 9 holes in one in golf the first time he played. I'll buy the volcano thing. I'm not buying that. So he blows his uncle up with an anti-aircraft gun and kills his own half-brother. So I just don't like the scenario of him having a lot of capability. Iran. It's a religious regime. The people in Iran are educated, very sophisticated. The Ayatollah, I think, is driven by his religious beliefs to act against those he disagrees with. If you're Israel, how much longer do you let this nuclear deal go? Would the Ayatollah use a nuclear weapon if he had it? How many people believe he would use it for religious reasons? How many people are unsure? How many people think he wouldn't? If you're Israel, you better be right. So we've got really smart people here. We're equally divided from he would, not sure, I don't think he will. You're Israel. Here's a key. When you write on the side of the missile, death to Israel, bad. So on the day we voted to let the agreement go forward by not getting enough votes to kill it, the Ayatollah tweeted out, Allah willing, in 25 years the Zionist state won't exist. Their provocative behavior in the region proves to me that they never wanted the money for peaceful purposes. They're trying to create instability in the region and help Shia minorities. They're trying to spread their view of Islam. They're building up their military with the money, not roads and bridges. Nobody believed Hitler when he wrote a book, hey, I'd like to kill all the Jews. He didn't say it that directly. Why would we take a risk that great for our friends in the region? And what do you think the Arabs will do if they see him marching toward a nuclear weapon? One last question. How many of you believe that the regime in Iran's goal is to build a nuclear weapon, not a power plant? Okay, if you believe they're liars and they've been cheating, why would you keep that capability intact even though you're monitoring it and you're degrading it, but in 15 years they can enrich and reprocess without limitation? Every Arab state who feels threatened by Iran is going to make a bet that if the world doesn't change the trajectory, they're going to go nuclear. And Iran, we got to get ahead of them. Here's something most people don't think about. Israel is thought to have nuclear weapons. They won't confirm it, but everybody believes it. Name one Arab state that got a nuclear weapon in response to Israel. Nobody in the Arab world believes that Israel's going to wake up one day and blow them off the map. When you talk to any Arab leader, they're apoplectic about the idea of the Ayatollah having a nuke because they believe he will use it. Welcome to Donald Trump's world. How do you get a better deal?
So beyond the question of the nuclear deal, it seems like the administration is having trouble operationalizing their strategy to confront Iranian aggression around the world. And how would you do it?
Well, one, I like the president's idea of waiving sanctions one more time, but challenging the Congress to change UNRWA, whatever the acronym for the law is, to say we're not going to honor the sunset clause. Under this deal, after 15 years, they can enrich and reprocess without limitation. Under this deal, they can take all the money from sanctions relief and spend it any way they like, no matter how provocative their behavior is. And in this deal, if we tried to sanction them for destabilizing Yemen, then the nuclear deal's off. In the last week of this deal, the Europeans and the United States gave the farm away. So I would press Congress to change our domestic law. If they continue to develop missiles, we reimpose sanctions. If they continue to be the largest state sponsor of terrorism, we impose sanctions. If the Europeans don't like it, well, that's just sorry. In Iraq, if we don't leave a residual force behind, we're going to lose all leverage we have. Baghdad is falling apart. To all those who fought in Iraq, you did your job. The surge did work. We made plenty of mistakes on Bush's watch. But the one thing President Bush did was he wanted to get it right. The surge did work. Political compromise was beginning to move forward. Security was vastly improved. When we pulled all of our troops out, everything that Senator McCain and I said happened. And now President Trump, if he wants to make sure ISIL doesn't come back, or Al-Qaeda in Iraq, he's got to be willing to leave at least 10,000 troops behind to maintain our gains. And that would actually give us some leverage in terms of Baghdad politics. Very few Iraqis want the Iranians militarily involved in Iraq. There are a lot of Iraqis believe that we're a stabilizing force. So that's one way to get leverage back. I'd help rebuild Anbar province has been devastated, but I don't want the Iraqi government to do some political reforms to make it worth our efforts, some metric-based aid. I'd leave troops there to protect our gains. That protects us as well as the Iraqis. Syria, I'd break the Russians away from the Iranians. We have no Sunni component in Syria. We're relying on Kurds that are hated by the Turks. YPG Kurds have a communist view of the world. They're never going to hold Raqqa or any of the Sunni Arab territory. They're willing fighters, but they could care less about Assad. Obama's biggest mistake was basically, as Hezbollah came to Assad's aid, as Iran came to Assad's aid, we pulled back our support for the Sunni Arabs. That training program we had said you couldn't fight Assad, you could only fight ISIL. Like 10 people showed up. So now we don't have a Sunni partner inside of Syria, and we're making Al-Qaeda's chance of recruiting, even as you destroy ISIL, go through the roof, because the only effective fighting force against Assad and the Ayatollah happens to be radical Islamic Sunnis, and that's going to make the gains are going to slowly leave, and the confrontation between the Arabs, the Kurds, and the Turks is just around the corner.
Is our focus, I mean, it's great that we've driven ISIL from its caliphate, from the physical caliphate, but have we been too focused on ISIL in Syria as opposed to Al-Qaeda, which has sort of been hanging back, watching us destroy their enemy, preparing to come in and take over the jihad, and also, by the way, for all the reasons you said, because we've been effectively partnering with Russia and Iran, they're mortal enemies of the Sunnis. We've been driving Sunni Arabs into the arms of Al-Qaeda. Is Al-Qaeda going to emerge from this victory in Syria as a strengthened, more potent force against us?
Well, Sunni extremism is the biggest winner of a policy that leaves Assad in power. The average Syrian is not buying into Assad staying in power because he's done more to kill their family than ISIL. So this idea somehow that we can have a settlement inside of Syria that leaves Assad in power is crazy. And if we have an Iranian proxy, that's no better. So the war never ends as long as Iran dominates Damascus. The best way to end this war is have the Syrian people reconstruct themselves, that we have a credible military opposition to Assad, that you go to Geneva and try to negotiate a settlement. The Russians want a military presence and influence. I'm willing to allow that to happen because it was there before. What I'm not willing to do is give yet another Arab capital to the Iranians. And the only way you can stop that, Marc, is to make sure that those who resist Assad have better capacity than they do today. Let the Russians know that you'll never achieve the goal of putting the Iranians in power in Damascus. If that's your end game, then you're not a reliable partner.
Let's talk about the terrorist threat here at home. You've been very critical about how the Trump administration has effectively continued the Obama policy of law enforcement approach to detention and interrogation. We just had 2 terrorists who were captured, one in New York, one in Libya. In both cases, the Trump administration followed the Obama policy to the letter, read them their Miranda rights, put them in Article 3 courts. Why is that a bad idea, and how are you going to fix it?
Well, that's a very fair question. It wasn't shaded at all. So, you and I have been living through this for this is hard stuff. And so it's as if Obama never left is a pretty hard criticism. All the things I said about the president being different than President Obama, I applaud President Trump for unleashing the military, wanting to rebuild it, being tougher on our enemies. He's done a great job standing up to Iran and North Korea. When it comes to detention policy and interrogation policy, it's a staff problem. I don't think Donald Trump really likes, hey, Mr. Terrorist, would you like the right to remain silent? All I'm suggesting is that we have a wartime regime for a war versus a criminal justice system. Criminal justice is about finding out who committed a crime, making sure they're fairly treated. The law of war is about protecting the country from an enemy bent on our destruction and applying our values, not theirs. So I was really hard on Obama for criminalizing the war. We don't put anyone in detention anymore. Every time you kill a terrorist, you're losing intelligence gathering. I don't mind killing terrorists. I'd like to capture some of these guys alive and figure out what they're up to. I've been a military lawyer for 33 years. The idea of reading an enemy combatant their Miranda rights is foreign to most military commanders and lawyers. Who is an enemy combatant? Anybody that joins their cause. There is no recruiting and induction center for ISIL or Al-Qaeda. You don't go somewhere and get a certificate. Here's a tip. What would make you an enemy combatant? If you wanted the ISIL flag in your hospital room, you're a good candidate. If you got a letter to ISIL in the car that you used to kill a bunch of people, you're a good candidate. Now, the way the system works is the government can declare somebody an enemy combatant initially, hold them for a period of time, then courts review whether or not that decision is legally sound. That's not, are you innocent or guilty of a crime? That's whether or not you have become an enemy combatant through your actions. What I want to do in the future is every time we capture somebody at home or abroad that we believe is doing it in the name of ISIL or Al-Qaeda, that are part of the terrorist network, known or unknown, that we gather as much intelligence as we can before we put them into the criminal justice system. That's all I'm asking. We treat them humanely, and we've had 2 instances in the United States where it's clear to me that the Trump administration had not thought much about it. The guy that killed 8 or 9 people in New York. I don't know if he has intelligence value, but I know this. You'll never find out completely by reading his Miranda rights in the first few hours. Interrogation by plea bargaining is not the way the war works. In any war, I've never heard anybody tell me the best way to get good information from an enemy prisoner is to give him a lawyer. So, the second guy, he didn't kill anybody, thank God, but why did he go to Bangladesh? Can you really be certain you know all there is to know about this guy in a few hours, in a few days? So what I would do is have professionals come in, the high-value interrogation team that Bush created. Obama created, I'm
Obama
sorry,
created, yeah.
and reactivate it. Every time there's a suspected terrorist attack, send in people from the intelligence community, local and international, and try to figure out who this guy is, how did they get so radicalized, and do they know more about other people who might be becoming radicalized before you put them in the criminal justice system and you can't talk to them without a lawyer. I've been a criminal lawyer. I'm not going to let you ask my client a bunch of hard questions unless I get something for it. We're trying to win a war here, folks. I want to know everything there is to know about how this terrorist attack happened. What do they know about future terrorist attack possibilities? And you can only do that under the law of war.
Shouldn't we all be proactively targeting people for capture,
Okay.
as opposed to people falling into our hands? Because
Here's the good news. We're on the offense. We're all over the world now going after terrorists. You got two choices when it comes to terrorists. Lay back and wait to get hit, or hit them before they hit you. That's just the way it is. So we need to stay on the offense all over the world. The likelihood of capturing somebody today is greater than it was on Obama's watch because we're actually going out trying to find them. What do we do when we capture them? Are we going to use Gitmo? If you don't like Gitmo, find someplace else. Gitmo's fine with me. I was willing to close it if you would move the prisoners to a secure facility and treat them as enemy combatants, not common criminals. The location doesn't matter that much to me. We had like 500,000 enemy prisoners inside the United States in World War II. What matters to me is that we hold them consistent with a legal theory that they're part of the enemy force. There is judicial review, and you don't have to let people go in a war. You can hold them as long as they're dangerous. Under domestic criminal law, you can't hold somebody forever without a trial, nor should you be allowed to. So where do we put them? And is the CIA going to be allowed to question people anymore? I've always opposed torture because it's not who we are and it helps the enemy. It doesn't get good intelligence. Senator McCain spoke eloquently about it. But I don't think the Army Field Manual should be the exclusive interrogation means for a nation. Its own line. It was written for a sergeant to make sure that they don't get themselves in a war of law violation. It should not be the exclusive interrogation technique. There are techniques that can get good information that are compliant with the Geneva Convention and Convention on Torture, and the CIA is out of the game. They need to be back in the game. They're experts at this. I'm not talking about waterboarding. I'm not talking about torture. But I think we've limited our abilities to gather intelligence by not having a detention site that we can use, not having an interrogation program that would be effective.
So since the Obama administration stopped the CIA interrogation program and stopped capturing people, we've been relying on signals intelligence increasingly, right? And the NSA has been hobbled by a lot of leaks, Snowden and others. And then Mike Hayden recently pointed out something which I thought was really interesting, that he said that because we're entering an age of end-to-end encryption, we're no longer going to be, there's a time coming up where we're no longer going to be able to get content. We're going to be following digital exhaust. And digital exhaust is useful, but we need content to keep the country safe. So doesn't that argue that it's really important to restart an interrogation program of some kind? Because if we can't get the content through listening, then how are we going to get it?
Well, yes, it does. And so what I'm trying to, and the administration is responding pretty positively here. What are the rules of the road for the CIA, the FBI, and the military? Should we be looking for terrorists? How many of you want to go look for terrorists? Raise your hands. If you find them, don't you want to exploit intelligence? I do. So the bottom line is that we don't have a system to detain somebody that the people in the field believe they can use. We're denying our own ability to gather intelligence in a rational way. So it does limit you to gathering intelligence through signal means, which the enemy is pretty good at defeating. So why would we, in an age of rising tension and threat, cut our military to historic lows, take off the table detention and interrogation of enemies who are trying to undercut the United States and hurt our way of life? This is insane. So President Trump is going to rebuild the military. And to my Republican friends, we need to deal with the DACA kids because it's not unreasonable to do two things at once. And if that's the price to get more military spending, I gladly will pay it. To the President, you've said a lot of good things about defeating our enemies. You've been a much better partner to our allies, and you've let the military do their job. Focus on repairing the damage done over the last 8 years when it comes to detention and interrogation. Don't put the warfighter in the worst possible spot. Catch and release. I spent a lot of time in Iraq and Afghanistan as a JAG. If you want to demoralize the troops, have a system where they catch the guy that killed their buddy, and 2 weeks later they're out. Sometimes you have to rely on the host country, who's an unreliable partner. This is not an Iraq problem. This is not an Afghan problem. It would be a shame to me to have a catch and release program, or the only option is to kill the guy.
So last question, then we'll turn to the audience for some questions. So in the 1988 presidential debates, no one mentioned Iraq, and yet a few years later we were at war in Iraq to repel Saddam's invasion of Kuwait. In the 2000 presidential debates, no one mentioned Al-Qaeda. And we were then in a war, in a great new war on terror, and had 9/11 happen. What is the issue that nobody's talking about today that worries you the most?
I don't think there's any issue that we're not talking about. But the issue that worries me the most is a terrorist organization obtaining a weapon of mass destruction, and certainly will use it. So when you look at the way the world is moving, unstable and dangerous regimes are being allowed to have more capability, not less. We're reducing our capability to gather intelligence and find out what's going on. As we break up terrorist armies, they become terrorist organizations. As ungoverned spaces in Africa grow, I don't think we're doing enough to make sure that the regimes that have weapons of mass destruction or want weapons of mass destruction are being denied future capability and the ability to pass it on to people who will use it. Cyber attacks are real. Terrorists could do that tomorrow. But if they could get a hold of a chemical or biological agent to kill millions of us, they would. If they could get a hold of a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. The only reason they used airplanes is because that was the best vehicle for them to use. The only reason 3,000 died on 9/11 is not 3 million. And not 3 million, they couldn't get the capability to kill 3 million people. That capability exists over time in North Korea and eventually in Iran. And I don't think we're doing enough to stop that problem.
Bring that full circle. You talked about the importance of how Kim Jong-un was going to sell this to anybody. He was building a nuclear plant in Syria. And the Israelis took it out. If they hadn't taken that out, that might be in ISIS hands today.
Yeah, that's true. And if we don't deal with Iran effectively, he's going to think we don't mean it regarding him. And if we don't enforce the denial policy in North Korea, the Iranians are going to say they're all talk. Our European allies don't want confrontation. They're not going to do anything unless we push them. So when it comes to North Korea, they're looking at what we're doing with Iran. When it comes to Iran, they're looking at what we do to North Korea. This is why I play golf. President Trump has really got a lot of hard decisions to make. I think he's got a good framework to deal from. I think he sees the threats, and he's got great advisors around him. But he has a weak allies, very emboldened opponents, and a Congress that's beyond fractured on foreign policy.
All right, let's take some questions from the audience. This gentleman right here.
Thank you first for your service. My name is Fred Bonig. Thank you for your service. My name is Fred Bonig. I'm from the Daily Ripple. I'm also a Gold Star dad. I had 3 other children as well serve in the military.
God bless you.
And one of the other 3 was hit with a hand grenade and went back and did a second tour in Afghanistan. And I became a fan of yours in 2015 when I stood on the corner of the stage in Netroots Nation and you gave your speech and you spoke about your childhood and your life as a kid. So I'm expecting an honest answer from you, and I think my family would deserve it. If you were out playing golf with the president and you leaned over and said, "Sir, could you tell me the name of the leader of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Boko Haram, or the leader of the group that killed those 4 special service soldiers. Do you think he could actually do that?
You know, I don't know if I could give you the answer to all of them too, but here's what I would tell your family. He knows they're bad, and he wants people in your family who are fighting to have more capability to go after them. So I don't think it really matters if he can tell you the name of terrorist leaders who are dying pretty frequently. I think what it matters is he's letting your son and others fight more effectively.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you for coming, Senator. My name is Mitsuo Nakai, a Japan native U.S. citizen. Regarding North Korea, number one, it's been said that they have covert operations to catch Kim Jong-un. I'm talking about South Korea. If you know anything about it, can you comment?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you
on it?
every detail right now.
Number
Kim,
two,
if I were you, I'd keep moving around.
Number two, President Trump said, you have to do what's best for your country, because I'm going to do what's best for my country. Does it mean, this is a hypothetical question, does it mean it's okay for Japan or South Korea to go nuclear? I don't think they will,
That's a good
but
question.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. Well, you asked a question about, in-depth knowledge of people. Does he get the big stuff right? I don't think having Japan and South Korea becoming nuclear protects us. I think it is a containment strategy. Saying, okay, you can't attack us because we'll wipe you off the map. And if Japan has a nuclear weapon, well, if you hit us, we'll hit you. And South Korea can say, well, if you hit us, we'll hit you. Mutual assured destruction is not what it used to be. Well, Iran, they welcomed that. So I think mutual assured destruction is the wrong paradigm to look at Kim Jong-un through. I think denial is. Because I don't think Japan and South Korea would sell a nuclear weapon if they had one. But I'm really certain that biological and nuclear weapons in the hands of Kim Jong-un over time are bad for everybody. What do you do if you're president? If you say denial, you better mean it, because if you don't, the Iranians are going to go nuclear. Every terrorist group in the world is going to say, we're all talk, he's no different than Obama. And I'm telling South Korea and Japan, you're great allies, we have soldiers there, we'll fight with you, but don't make this president have to choose between a preemptive strike and regional security. Don't make him do that. I'm telling China that.
Questions? Jessica.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Trisco-Darden. I'm a Jean Kirkpatrick Fellow here at the American Enterprise Institute, and I work on issues related to U.S. foreign assistance. So my question to you, as someone who cares very deeply about this issue and about American leadership in the world, is what leaders like yourself or the Congress can do to shore up American moral leadership and values. You mentioned the strike on Syria. Many would argue that that was one act in a long decline of U.S. moral leadership in the world. So what role do you see for yourself in that?
Well, I don't think it's immoral to try to strike Assad. I don't think it's immoral to go out and put bad guys on their back foot. I think it's the right thing to do to go after evil. What's immoral is to appease evil. If there's one thing I can tell you that has worked throughout history, is that when you let evil run rampant, it will. And it takes good people to stop it, like this guy's son. I never met your son. I don't know where he's from, but he's having to go fight a bunch of complicated people we've never met, simply because we believe in the right of self-determination for us and others. We believe in certain values that our terrorists don't. We believe that a young lady should have a chance to grow up and seek her future. So this is a real big contest between values. And we're on the right side. I am on the side of stopping radical Islam because I think it is a scourge to mankind. Not Islam, radical Islam. But I'm also on the side of helping people as a form of stopping evil. You can drop bombs in Syria, and it did some good, but the biggest threat to radical Islam is to build a small schoolhouse for a poor young girl where she can get an education and raise her children and be independent enough to express herself. That drives terrorists crazy. Economic opportunity will do more damage to terrorists than military action. Empowering women is the ultimate way to win this war, and foreign assistance is one tool in the toolbox. General Mattis said, if you cut the State Department's budget, then you need to buy me more bullets. Problem I got with this administration. How do you cut the State Department's budget 29% and build up the military and expect to get a good outcome? How do you hold and build? You hold and build by having security, but you do stay on the ground like we did in World War II, and you help people build capacity. It's hard, it's frustrating, but there's no substitute for it. So the soft power component is essential to winning the war as any military engagement. We're trying to kill an ideology. Well, how do you kill an ideology? You replace it. Here's the good news. After 42 trips to Afghanistan and Iraq, most people are not buying what these nut jobs are selling. Most young people over there don't want to join ISIL. Most parents don't want their daughter to be given to ISIL or Al-Qaeda. We just need to help them. When you lump them all into one group, you're doing a great disservice to all those who are fighting and dying. There have been more Muslims killed than anybody fighting radical Islam. I have lost a significant number of people I have known during my engagements as Colonel Graham and Senator Graham have been killed standing up to Al-Qaeda and ISIL. They need our help. More than military, they need economic developmental aid. If you're serious about protecting America, you better keep the fight over there. And the best way to keep the fight over there is to keep our men and women in the intel community and soldiers active in the enemy's backyard. But you also need to plow the ground over there and sow new seeds. So without soft power, we're doomed to lose. And this cutting the State Department's budget was really crazy. And I'm in charge of that budget. And we restored the 2017 funding, and we're going to restore the 2018 funding.
Right there. Later.
Two more questions, I gotta go.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator Graham. My name is Jenny Park with the USA General Korea. Recently, President Trump mentioned about open the talk with North Korea, but not without preconditions. The North Korea have to give up their nuclear programs before committing to talks. And second question, South Korea invited the North Koreans to come Olympics,
Right.
Pyeongchang Olympics. And as you know that the North Korea is a terrorist country. But the South Korean government pay for all various expenses to North Korea.
Right.
But is that the South Korea is in violation of North Koreans' UN sanctions or US sanctions? Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not going to say by allowing the North Koreans to participate in the Olympics that we violated the sanctions. I am saying that is a very bad message to send to Kim Jong-un, who will see it in a bad way, not a good way. He'll see it as weakness. The North Korean athletes, I mean, I have nothing against North Korean people. The average North Korean is like 3 inches shorter than the average South Korea because just they're being starved to death. I can't believe we're wondering what to do in 2018 about a man who just enslaves his people. And all I can say is I don't mind talking. To me, it's fine to talk without preconditions. Here's the talk. I don't care if Trump talks to him. Hey, guy, you need to knock this off. If you keep this up, we're going to make sure that you never have the ability to hit our homeland. We're not trying to change your regime. We're not bringing democracy. But if you keep this up, there's going to be a war and you're going to lose it. Thank you very much. I want him to understand what comes his way if he keeps building the capabilities he's hell-bent on developing. And I want Trump to prove to China, South Korea, Japan, North Korea, that he means it. I think he means it. And the one thing about the Olympics is I think it will be taken as that we really don't mean it. How do you tell somebody in one breath, hey, little rocket man, you're evil, bad, whatever, and invite him to the biggest party on the planet?
All right, last question. This lady right here.
Hi, thank you. Rachel Oswald, Congressional Quarterly. Another question on North Korea. Senator, some of the things you said, if you could provide a little bit more clarity on, you said that Trump sees an attack on North Korea as a last resort.
Military.
But military strike. But how would you define that? Is that if
a good
we see
question.
them on the verge of getting a deliverable ICBM, or that they have something on the launch pad, that would be striking? Can you talk a little bit about preventative versus preemptive in Trump's eyes?
Okay, military option as last resort means that diplomacy has to be used to its full extent. I don't mind talking. I wouldn't even put any conditions on talking because I want to deliver the right message. Let's try to engage China to the fullest extent possible, use carrots, use sticks, whatever we need to do. So that first meeting was somebody's going to come in this office one day and say they're close. We think they're there. It's just a matter of time. So I know there's some red lines in the president's mind. I know there's some red lines that our intel community believes exist. Certainly not going to share them publicly, but this is not an ill-conceived idea about denial. When does that moment come? Is when their program matures and goes across these red lines. At the pace we're on, it's just a matter of time. If something doesn't change, it will be inevitable that these red lines are met. If there's another test of a warhead, now why did I say that it dramatically accelerates likelihood of preemptive action? Because that's sort of one of the missing pieces of the puzzle. And here's the problem. In a totalitarian regime, it is hard to gather good intelligence. You know, you can be wrong. We've seen that in the past, right? But you got to make a decision. Where are they headed, and what do they want to do? All the indications to me that they're headed to achieving the capability that President Trump says he would deny, because they're miscalculating. They're believing if they get that capability, they're home free. That everybody will leave them alone in perpetuity, and only without a nuclear weapon that can hit America are they safe. And there's some evidence out there that if you give up your weapons of mass destruction, it's probably not a good thing. Look at the Ukraine. If the Ukraine had it to do all over again, would they've done that? I don't want proliferation of nuclear weapons into the hands of people who might use them, regimes who might sell them to the people who might use them is my biggest concern. So in terms of time, I don't know exactly, but as General McMaster said, we're running out of time.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could stay in your seats while Senator Graham departs the room, thank you
Thank you
so
very
much for
much.
being here.
Thank you.